The European Commission has accused the Belarusian government of tricking migrants and refugees with false promises of easy access to the European Union in what is called a gangster-style approach to a long-running migrant crisis. Hundreds of migrants and refugees remained camped out in near-freezing temperatures in Belarus on Tuesday after Polish security forces blocked people from attempting to cross the border. Poland has for months accused Belarus of trying to cause a major confrontation by encouraging migrants and refugees from the Middle East and Africa to cross into Central Europe and the wider European Union in revenge for Western sanctions on longtime President Alexander Lukashenko's government. On Monday, the situation escalated as hundreds of people headed towards the Polish border. Some tried to breach a barbed wire fence using spades and other tools. And Global Affairs Analyst Calvin Dack joins me from Washington. Good to have you join us.
Good to be here.
So many people say, or many analysts say, that this is some sort of revenge coming from President Alexander Lukashenko after sanctions were imposed on him during the violence that erupted after elections in that country. This seems to be working, isn't it?
Yes, and I think that there are three things to really think about when we see what's happening there. One is, as you mentioned, this is definitely a way to get back from Lukashenko because of the sanctions, but that's also tied to the influence that Russia and, specifically Putin want to have in Europe and around the world. That Russia's trying to show that when it wants to, it can get involved in situations and make things even more difficult than they already are. So, I mean, that's one part. The second part is it's so unfortunate that as we hear from the Polish side about, the surge of troops and protecting the border, and then we hear about in Belarus where they're asking for sanctions to be reduced, the people left in the middle are these migrants who are there and they are being mistreated. Some have died. And I think that's so unfortunate that they're being pawns in this situation. And then I just say the third point that I thought about is when we think about the European Union, even the involvement of the United States and other world powers, where's the conversation about helping the conditions where these migrants are coming from in the Middle East, North Africa, so that this won't be as big of a problem? All of those things combined make it an incredibly complicated and dangerous situation at the Polish border.
And it's interesting you mentioned the migrant situation at the border, because journalists have not also been allowed to see what's going on at that border. And it does also look like Lukashenko might also be sending a message that the EU is hypocritical in its handling of the situation at the border.
Yes, because we know that the Lukashenko has protested the sanctions because of the clampdown on human rights and civil rights in Belarus. So he's trying to show the hypocrisy of the EU and of the U.S. He's mentioned that as well. But I don't think that's anything new from him. The difference is that he's now using people from third countries in the middle to make these provocations at the border, because he knows that the Polish forces are going to protect their border and they're going to be inevitable clashes, and that's going to be the hypocrisy that I think he wants to point out about human rights in the EU.
And this is really not about Poland, because when you listen to most of the migrants, most of them say they want to end up in Germany, some in France and some in Belgium. So how should these countries, especially Germany, handle this?
Well, I think you're exactly correct that if the migrants are successful in doing what they've been told they could do, they want to go through Poland and go to these other countries in the EU, namely, Germany and France. I think it's incumbent upon those countries to have a stronger voice, not just on the sanctions for Belarus and speaking out, but working with Poland to make sure that what's happening at the border, that we don't have any more migrant deaths, and that they step up, because they do need to acknowledge that they are the desired endpoint and that Poland's just in the middle.
And do you think that Russia should be engaged? Because you mentioned Russia here and the role that Russia play. Belarus or President Lukashenko is some sort, I hate to use the word puppet, but is some sort of puppet of President Putin. And he does have a hold on, President Putin does have a hold on President Lukashenko. Do you think that the EU could engage Russia? Because it also seems like Russia wants to be the country that comes in to save the day.
Yes, save the day for Russia, I think. You know, when I was looking at this situation yesterday and this morning, I said, you know, it's getting really hard to pick a crisis happening anywhere in the world where Russia isn't trying to insert its hand. I don't think the EU has any choice other than to deal with Russia because, you know, not just recently, but, you know, Belarus is, you know, to use the word you were saying, puppet, which I think is absolutely correct, with Lukashenko. So the person behind the scenes directing this is Russia, and it is Putin. And Russia benefits from this because if the EU and if the US is brought in to deal with this situation, to have the discussion over human rights, to have the discussion over decreasing or increasing sanctions in Belarus, they're not able to do the other things that are priorities that would more directly affect Russia. So this works in Russia's favor because if the person that you're negotiating with on other things has been made to be busy on something else, that only helps Russia and it hurts the EU and eventually the US.
And this is now being called a hybrid war. We'll see how it plays out in the end. Always great to talk to you, Global Affairs Analyst Calvin Dark.
Thank you.